Hello, and welcome to Thinking Bitcoin Stuff with myself. I'm with Daniel, and today we are going to be exploring the answers to a question that I put to him, which are what really is a full node, and how exactly does that relate to mining?
Okay, well, I was wondering if you could kind of tell me about what you were thinking before we had our conversation about this earlier.
Well, one of the things that had been clear to me was that nodes were involved in verifying the transactions on the Bitcoin network. But what was not clear to me was whether or not, by definition, those nodes were also mining, e.g., in order to be a full node, were you also participating in the hashing competition to win the reward for the block?
Okay, so this is kind of an ideological issue, I think, and they're two separate uh issues here. So uh mining mining is the only thing that produces something which can be verified by other people. Okay, but
Okay,
verification in and of itself does not, that is something that you can do for yourself without mining.
right.
And uh so mining is the only thing that is kind of contributes to the network in kind of a way that might be said to make it more healthy. But I actually disagree that the hash rate needs to be as high as possible. I think it just needs to be as high as it needs to be to solve the double spending problem. But that's a
No, but
subject for another video.
no, indeed, but it's one of those interesting intellectual kind of frameworks that you bring to I resonate with regards to we need to be looking towards what's good enough in order to achieve whatever goal it is or situation is that we are trying to achieve. So that's another example of that, which is it doesn't have to be as hard as possible. It has to be sufficiently possible, right? Much like in order to succeed in a competition, you have to be better than the others. You do not have to, by definition, be the very best possible in whatever it is that you're doing. You have to build a better widget, not build the best widget ever known to man. So I think the other part of my question related to how, because I was sort of saying I didn't have sufficiently clear visual sort of visualization understanding of how Bitcoin Cash and Bitcoin running on the same network of nodes would choose to operate. Was it the case that a node could verify one or the other or both?
Oh, okay. So now there's another issue in there, which is how do you define network? And I think network should be defined economically. So I think it's perfectly fine to say that the Bitcoin Core and Cash software are part of the same network,
Mm-hmm.
even though they have different rules.
Mm-hmm.
So first of all, the Bitcoin Core networking protocol is or well let's take a step back. The computers have to have a way of communicating with one another,
Mm-hmm.
right? So there has to be a way of communicating the information about what is in the blockchain,
Mm-hmm.
and what is going to be in the next block, or what is a candidate to be in the next block, right? But this protocol is logically distinct from the blockchain itself. Like, I
Mm-hmm.
would say the blockchain exists in the Platonic world of the forms,
Mm-hmm.
and it is not it you do not need to imagine that people are talking about it in any particular way.
Mm-hmm.
So I could write Bitcoin software that has the same has the rules for the blockchain, according to one of the camps, one of the Bitcoin camps, and but I could design a completely different networking protocol that has nothing to do with the previous one that Bitcoin uses, and other pieces of software could implement this protocol and work with me, and it would be a different way of talking to other computers about the blockchain. But and some people would say that it is a different network because it is using a different protocol. But I would argue that anybody who is talking about the blockchain is part of the network. And if uh, if there are two units which share much of the information in the blockchain, then it is also okay to say they are part of the same network. But the situation is a little different because it's almost like there's networks that have overlap but don't completely overlap, I would
Mhm.
say.
Mhm. The way I imagine a network is in the context of having a kind of a visual sense of lots of little points, which are nodes, and then the network are the connections between those nodes. So if the nodes are the computers and the computers are all talking to each other, then then the way in which they're talking to each other is distinct from what they're saying to each other. So
Sure,
whatever it is
sure.
that
And
enables them
really,
to talk
really,
to each
then
other is
there's only one network, and that's the internet.
right,
Uh,
right,
so the
right.
ones who are talking about the blockchain, that's a subset.
Okay, and so as you
So
explained to me, the context of Bitcoin and then forking into Bitcoin Cash is an exercise in which the various nodes, whether they do or do not also mine, the various nodes within the Bitcoin network and Bitcoin Cash network have then a choice about whether or not to follow the rules of ABC, the rules of core, or to follow both sets of rules.
okay, so I want to disagree with you there and say that it is I think it's better to think of talking about the blockchain as being completely separate from computers entirely, because
Okay.
to me, what the important thing is the price between the two, and that is not something that has anything to do with the protocol at all. And to me, if I am I could have bitcoins that are locked in a paper wallet or something, and I can prove that I own them without doing any kind of verification or mining on the network. And I could, get, say, collateral to get a futures contract on
Right.
core versus cash on the basis of my investment, without running any software that is, the Bitcoin network. But I would say that I'm doing something that is, you know it's at least as important as, you know as being a full node on the network, you know.
Right. And although I totally appreciate the kind of tongue in cheek as well as the more serious kind of implications of the Chrome extension that's out there that replaces blockchain with giant, enormous Excel spreadsheets, it is important to not swing to the other end of the spectrum and underestimate the impact and importance of the existence of giant Excel spreadsheets, because that's effectively, once it's in the spreadsheet, then precisely what you're talking about is available to you. You don't need to participate in any of the other stuff
Yeah.
by way of being able to verify they're your Bitcoin. You can do what you want with them. I,
Okay, so, well, now, having said what I said in my last the last thing I said, now that that's out of the way, from the perspective of a computer, the the difference between Bitcoin Core and Bitcoin Cash is that they disagree on what the rules are for a valid block
mm-hmm,
after a certain point.
mm-hmm,
And from the perspective of the computer, it is exogenous information as to which set of rules you are treating as rules that you care about, and you can choose either or both. So you could have the same computer, and of course you could bring Litecoin into this too. You can be verifying the Litecoin rules or
as well.
whatever or anything. Yeah.
As well. And so, I mean, I think this goes to the point of connection by way of what's important is the price value, right? Which is that a lot of these questions for me started kind of clarifying in terms of wanting to understand better. Because in the context of trying to decide what is the value of any of this stuff, um, any of it, and the framework from traditional forms of valuation, right? Start with a kind of industrialized capitalism where valuation is pretty simple. You're dealing with mostly real assets. And you might be dealing with some more abstract things like brand and reputation and so on. But it's really with .com and the internet that the idea of a network having a value, an actual numerical, quantifiable value, starts to impact ways of thinking about money, right? And so, as I was saying to you earlier, you know, Facebook, Google, they were quantifiable, transparently quantifiable network growing events. So people in the market, outside the market, could actually see how many more connections there were, how big the network was growing, et cetera, et cetera. And of course, the fact that they had to monetize through advertising is still a huge problem. But the value of a network itself was taken to be to something you could effectively go to the bank with, right? Whether you were doing an IPO or you were then justifying the power of the share price and all the rest of it, right?
Yeah, and you know, many companies have been able to get investment purely on the basis of having large numbers of people having signed up to their database,
Right, right,
regardless of whether the company even knows how to get money out of these people.
right. And I think that it, you know, that makes me say that in the ICO context, right, what you have is a kind of paradigm being put forward that the people who are participating in the IPO believe in the project sufficiently enough that the day after the IPO, they are effectively active members of a network, right? So that if you raise, kind of like reverse engineering, if you raise $50 million worth of an ICO pot, it means there's this sort of presumed suggestion that the next day you'll have a $50 million worth network in existence, functioning, verifiable. We know there are this many people doing this many thing. And the challenge for me as I'm thinking about how to evolve traditional trading and investing and gambling frameworks into the Bitcoin sphere, right, is to say, look, I really do buy the idea that the value of the network is the premise on which you then value any of these things. The challenge, as far as I understand it from having chatted more with you, is that in this context, Bitcoin, the most you know permissionless and non-needing of trust and sort of giant Excel spreadsheet transparent entity is actually totally obscure when it comes to knowing how many nodes there are and what those choices by way of which set of rules to follow or not follow they're choosing to do. And you should
So
share that
I
to
would
you.
disagree that it is totally obscure, but I would say that from the perspective of a computer on the Bitcoin, the computer network, that it is obscure.
Mm-hmm,
But the way that you would, not that there is nothing that the computer can do, but
mm-hmm,
it depends a lot on other nodes being honest about who they are and what they're up to.
mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah, I think that if you want to learn about the network, you shouldn't go off only what your computer can tell you. You should go off what you can see in the real world, and that will be obscure too. Not totally obscure, but I mean it is hard to evaluate the kind of information that that is available out there.
So
But
in your opinion, if one is trying to seek kind of indications, the most authentic indications of, say, size or strength or growth of a network in the context of that being kind of a baseline underlying value for whatever asset or project is run on top of a network. What do you think those indicators, real world indicators, are? Where should
Well,
we be looking?
so I guess the first thing would be hashing power. That's
Mm-hmm.
just, the hash rate. But I would say the hash rate is entirely past focused.
Mm-hmm.
So it does not tell you about the future of the network, but it does tell you that, if there's a lot of hashing going on, then there's a lot of value being ascribed to the coin, and that would be a difficult thing to it's a difficult thing to build up that cumulative proof of work over time. If there were simply some like group of conspirators who are trying to make people think that Bitcoin is valuable, long enough, without actually being good for anything. You know what
Right,
I mean?
right. But what you pointed out, to me, this really important distinction may seem very minor, but um, hashing rate and allocation of hashing rate is not necessarily going to tell us about those nodes which are being run without any kind of mining. So the number of people who say would respond to advocacy like Andreas Antonopoulos with regards to, and I would say Tonebase as well, would advocate, have your own node, retain the power to verify, yourself. But does that would not necessarily, by definition, have to include a mining function. So what we may not know that much about, in terms of, I suppose it is the comparison of the commodity money entity applications, Bitcoin Cash, Bitcoin, Litecoin, but to really kind of try and establish um, some of the metrics that are so clearly difficult to get if you don't have a point of centralized control and you have a scenario in which there are not clear incentives for node holders to reveal accurately what they are not letting their computers choose by way of supporting, right?
Okay, so yeah, so I would say that one of the absurd things that is just a feature of Bitcoin since the beginning is most I want to say most people do not know why Bitcoin is valuable, and all you can really know about that is many people disagree with me about why Bitcoin is valuable, but I don't think that I have all the information on why Bitcoin is valuable. I would say that I think that I know some things about why Bitcoin is valuable, and most people disagree with me on what I think I know. But I would say that the kinds of things that I would like to know more, that's information that is hard for me to know how to come by as well. So I think that you are talking about something that would be good to know, but if you look out into the Bitcoin world, what you mostly see is illusion, because you see people trying to tell you reasons that they are valuable, that don't that are not, that don't fully that seem like they are not very good reasons to me, and I don't know where to look to find the good reasons.
Well, I mean, I don't know how we're doing on time, but I would love to definitely have you, give me a kind of thumbnail explanation as to why you think Bitcoin is valuable. I mean, in the guise of my anthropology, it's one of the basic questions that I found myself asking anybody that I meet in any kind of crypto or Bitcoin environment is why is it important to you?
Oh, okay. So I think that the thing that makes Bitcoin the thing that would make a cryptocurrency valuable is okay. So the thing I think the function of money is for a group of investors to invest in one another, essentially, because that's what the network effect is.
Mm-hmm.
And I would not want to be in a network if I wasn't getting good other people out of it. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
there's a price point. I'm saying there's a point where I wouldn't care about it anymore. So um when altcoins were just starting to be a thing, my argument against them was that people buying altcoins don't understand the strategy very well. Because if they wanted to experiment with different rules, it would make more sense to experiment with Bitcoin.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't say this fully because I just didn't really think that this was going to be necessary. You see,
Mm-hmm.
but
Right, right.
I would have said that a fork was a better thing to do than an altcoin, but I mostly just didn't really think any of the things the altcoins were doing were that interesting or important anyway. So it's not like I didn't take the argument about experimentation seriously because I didn't think that the altcoins were really doing any real experiments. So my
Right.
argument is that the people who buy altcoins are bad investors
Mm-hmm.
because they don't understand the strategy well enough. And so the people who stick with Bitcoin are the smarter investors. And so that's who I would prefer to stick with.
Right.
Um,
Right.
Whereas I think that the in since then the a kind of stupidity has taken over the Bitcoin tribe uh, that makes them look like not very good investors to me,
Yeah.
and I have been um, well, that'll be another topic for another video. But I think that is what you need to look for is who what who do you think are the people who really understand the strategy of Bitcoin? Who understands Bitcoin the game,
Right.
right? And what do they think is is important to do, and which networks would they want to be a part of? And that is circular reasoning because ultimately it is about a group of people finding each other. Oh, and in fact we talked about that in the last video because I was saying I wanted to make a new tribe in our Plato video, I guess.
Right.
that
Right.
that's what was the word you used? We're combining, we're
We're
agglomerate
aggregating. We're
aggregating. Yes.
aggregating.
So the valuable network is the one that enables smart people to aggregate with one another.
Right.
And
And in the
I would
very
argue,
process, right. And you're circular because in the very process of aggregating, you are inducing others to aggregate with you. So
right.
precisely, if you identify who's smart and you follow them, then they are likely to follow you, which I grasp. It is, I think, a really important and not widely enough appreciated understanding with regards to investors investing in other investors.
Okay, wait. Now, let me just answer the question that this video was supposed to be about, and then we'll end it. But there's so much we talked about a lot that we have to do more videos on. But basically, like if you are, I think that if you are a verifying node, what that means is you have some idea about what the rules of Bitcoin are,
Mm-hmm.
and you don't need to commit to any one, because
Yep.
you can run the Bitcoin Core rules and the Bitcoin Cash rules at the same time, and there's no reason to pick one or the other and say that those are the real rules of Bitcoin. And but if you are a verifying node, you are not adding value to the rest of the network in any verifiable way, in any way that anyone else can necessarily benefit from.
Right.
And mining is the only thing that you can do that other people can verify. But I question whether mining in and of itself adds value to the network. And I don't think that I don't think that you are helping Bitcoin by running a full node. I think that you would run a full node because you want a full node. You want to be able to have all of the information that it provides you. And otherwise, I don't think you need one. And I don't think that you are helping the network if you are running a full node, or if you are doing mining. I think that if you do either of these, that should be you should do it because it's a selfish activity. You have some reason for yourself that you actually want to do it. Uh, and and that kind of goes back to who is a valuable person, because I would say that it is someone who doesn't need one thing that makes a person valuable is that he doesn't need allies as much. Like, somebody who needs allies is not as valuable as someone who
Is
can
providing,
spend some time without allies, you
yeah,
know?
or is the person who is the ally to be had. I mean,
So I would say that you have to know what being selfish is. And that is part of how you evaluate who is a good investor. And you want to know how he is being selfish, and whether his strategy is sophisticated. And I would actually say that if somebody that's kind of not, I just don't think that it is true that you are helping other people if you're running a full node. And I think
no,
that is
but I would argue from your premises, right, that it is definitively self-helping to run a node. There is definitely a way of constructing this whereby if your understanding of Bitcoin is of a certain type of understanding, then your participation in both creating, preserving part of a decentralized network, you are actively participating in the stuff that creates value for you personally.
right.
So,
Yes.
so if it's construed in that manner, if it's construed in a kind of Ayn Randish manner, and it's not reconstrued as help others, but one understands actually that one is helping oneself, um, and that what you need is an aggregate of individuals who are all interested in helping oneself.
Right. But I don't think that it should be your choice whether to run a full node. And it doesn't really mean much to me if you do or you don't, because I think that it's a perfectly good decision to say, I just want my paper wallets, and I want to be able to prove that I have them to specific people if I should ever, if that need should ever arise,
Well, that's a premise of there being a sufficient number of nodes somewhere, verifying nodes somewhere, right? I mean,
Sure.
that goes back to the kind of the Platonic form of as long as the blockchain exists,
So
right?
I guess I would say that people want to be doing mining, and I'm depending on other people who want to do
Yeah,
mining, because
yeah.
that's the only thing that I can verify. If other people want to verify whatever, because the miners were going to have to agree with one another on to some extent on what the rules are, or
Or they
they
don't
won't.
get any net benefit, right? And in that
Yeah,
context of seeing that they're deriving value and therefore it creates a value for you who are holding the thing that they are mining, right? That makes sense to me.
okay, I absolutely got to go for
I
real now.
know,
So
I
so
know.
great
So
video.
thank you.
Thanks for having me on your show.
Always a pleasure. See you in the next one.
Okay, bye.